Members, ayes 40, no 0. The Assembly amendments are concurred in. Clapping on the floor, Senators. Members, we are now moving on to file item 99, Senator Pan. 101. Oh, I apologize for that. File item 101. Senator Pan, Secretary, please read.
Senate Bill 292 by Senator Pan, an act relating to public employees' retirement.
Senator Pan.
Thank you, Mr. President and Senators. SB 292 clarifies a conflict that currently exists between the traditional use of the decades-old voter-approved pension tax levies and a requirement in the Public Employees Pension Reform Act, or PEPRA. Clarifying amendments are taken in the Assembly to ensure that only employee positions originally covered by the levies would be subject to this exemption, and that the exemption in the bill only applies to the prohibition on an employer in the case of using dedicated tax levies from paying any portion of the employee's contributions. I respectfully ask for an aye vote on concurrence with Assembly amendments.
Members, debate or discussion on this item? Debate or discussion? Seeing and hearing none, Secretary, please call the roll.
Allen? Aye. Anderson? No. Bates? No. Bell? Aye. Berryhill? No. Block? Canella? Aye. De Leon? Fuller? No. Gaines? No. Galgiani? Glazer? Aye. Hall? Aye. Hancock? Aye. Hernandez? Aye. Hertzberg? Aye. Hill? Aye. Hueso? Aye. Huff? Aye. Jackson? Aye. Lara? Aye. Leno? Aye. Leva? Aye. Liu? Aye. McGuire? Aye. Mendoza? Aye. Mitchell? Aye. Monning? Aye. Morlock? No. Morrell? No. Wynn? No. Nielsen? No. Pan? Aye. Pavley? Aye. Roth? Aye. Runner? No. Stone? No. Vidak? No. Wykowski? Aye. Wolk? Wolk, aye.
Call the absent members.
Block? Aye. De Leon? Aye. Galgiani?
Ayes 27, noes 12. The Assembly amendments are concurred in. One moment, please. What file? Members, we're moving to file item 77. File item 77, members, SB 107. Members, it's a little noisy up here. We can't hear. Thank you. Secretary, please read.
Senate Bill 107 by the Committee on Budget and Fiscal Review, an act relating to local government and making an appropriation therefore to take effect immediately, bill related to the budget.
Senator Leno.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, I have saved the best for last. This is our last budget trailer bill, our redevelopment and local government trailer bill. We had a very lengthy discussion with a lot of very good questions asked of the Department of Finance in our Budget Committee hearing today. And the bill addresses our next collective step in the process of dissolving our redevelopment agencies. And though the cost to the state in this bill may be in the low hundreds of millions of dollars in yet received revenue, it will benefit cities and counties that equal amount. as it will save the state and local governments similar amounts of money in potential legal costs, because this will bring greater certainty to the dissolution process. It allows for the potential expenditure of hundreds of millions of bond proceeds for low and moderate income housing purposes, as well as other governmental purpose redevelopment projects. It facilitates the repayment of loans and other obligations by removing tax increment caps and time limit and funding limitations. It also expands options and opportunities for local governments, which is why many cities and counties are in support, allowing for the validity of so-called re-entered agreements, including certain highway infrastructure projects, as repayable obligations, facilitating the payment for pension and state water project overrides, also expanding the definitions of RDA loans that can be repaid to local governments. A very important issue is discussed in committee, also including parking facilities as government purpose properties, and addressing specific ongoing issues related to state-local finance. I know that the issue of and the process of dissolving our RDAs has been a challenging one for all of us. But this bill creates some distinct and valuable opportunities for our cities and counties. Once we have taken the vote on this bill, I will be introducing a letter to the Journal, which attends to some outstanding issues that were brought forward in committee and also at public comment today. And given that there was some lack of understanding of what was in the bill, we wanted to resolve those ambiguities in a letter to the Journal. And I'll get to the details, but just so you know, the three main points in the letter, which I will get to, it will attend to that the bill shall not result in the denial of a loan previously approved. That was an issue concerning Glendale and Watsonville in particular. Also clarifying that the $5 million loan amount is per loan and not cumulative, and also that administrative costs for nonprofits are addressed. So I'll get to that in just a moment, but just so you know, that is all going to be attended to in a letter to the Journal. So I ask for your aye vote on SB 107.
Members, debate or discussion on this item? Debate or discussion. Senator Stone.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, this injustice, the stealing of RDAs from cities and counties, took away local government's last incentive to eliminate blight, to bring business and commerce to our cities. It was probably one of the most devastating hits that our cities and counties had to endure. And I made a commitment when I ran for this office that I was going to protect local government from the impacts of the state government with unfunded mandates and unfair policies. Unfortunately, SB 107 had great intentions, but it's been a very contentious road from the very beginning. And while there's some very good points in it, such as the 4 struggling cities in Riverside County that inappropriately had their VLF stolen from them, the most egregious was the city of Harupa Valley, who had the money stolen from them just prior to them incorporating on July the 4th, leaving them strapped, leaving the county of Riverside on the hook for helping them provide for basic public safety. Eastvale, Wildemar, Menifee. It's creating winners and losers. It's, I think, very unfortunate that we're getting this at 9:34 on the last day of session with very little time for cities and counties to read all the fine print, all the details. I think this is, frankly, government at its worst. You would think that you would have the endorsement of the California League of Cities, that you would have the endorsement of the California Association of Counties if this was such a good bill that was equitable to all cities and all counties that have taken the hit. But unfortunately, the cities are the ones that are taking the biggest hits. And this bill is creating many winners and many losers. I appreciate that the speaker on this bill was talking about the $5 million, according to the California League of Cities. It says for all loan agreements cumulatively. I think the great senator from San Francisco has made it very clear. I just want to make sure in the record it's $5 million per loan. I think that will please the cities. The transfers of real property, city transfers of real property to CRAs for the use of by CRAs, and CRA is required to pay city for real property interest. It's unclear how widely applicable this provision is. City attorneys reviewing this bill this morning identified Santa Monica, Daly City, and Hayward as potentially benefiting. The bill requires that there was a transfer of an interest in real property to the redevelopment agency. This type of loan does not include agreements between a city and its RDA in which the interest in real property remained with the city. Cash. This is the Department of Finance's original proposal in AB 113. While cash loans will supposedly be recognized, the interpretation of required payment schedule on page 80, line 3 by the Department of Finance will make the difference in whether such loans are recognized or must be further litigated. I thought the purpose of this bill was to stop the litigation. The Department of Finance will have the opportunity to interpret the phrase repayment schedule. Loans of cash do not include repayment schedule, as the phrase is ultimately interpreted by the Department of Finance will not qualify the repayment. The interest on these loans recalculated from the original at 3% simple interest. This interest rate would be less than what these local agencies could otherwise recover based on existing law and the Glendale decision. And what's really unfortunate is we're stacking the deck against these cities to utilize their funds for legal costs. The Department of Finance is exempted from the Administrative Procedures Act, but these local agencies are restricted to the administrative cost allowance as the sole funding force for their legal costs unless they take money from their general fund, which they will only be able to recoup if they're successful. So to summarize, I have 5 cities that are big losers in the approximately 12, 13 cities that I represent. The county, of course, of Riverside is on the hook for $24 million if this does not pass, or if my colleague from Riverside's bill gets signed into law, but unfortunately it's suffered vetoes in the past. So there's a poison pill in here for probably every one of us. I just wish that there could have been some conference between the League of Cities, CSAC, the governor's office, the Senate, the Assembly, and reach an appropriate compromise. It's unfortunate that we're all part of the state of California, and it's almost like it's a war between the state of California and the cities and some counties. We should be working together to try to ease these horrific financial setbacks that have been endured by cities that have now had to cut back on their public safety expenditure. They have not been able to provide low to moderate income housing, which is a very important aspect of redevelopment, something that's very important to all of us here. It's basically stripped us of those types of funds, and I think that's very unfortunate. I was a strong proponent of RDA. I saw it work in the city of Temecula, where I started my political endeavors in 1992 when we had an old town, Temecula, founded in the 1800s, where the train and Butterfield stage used to end, and it was dilapidated. And so we did what was called the Old Town Specific Plan. And properties that you could buy for $5 a foot, $3 a foot back then, today are selling for much, much more. The state made the investment by allowing us to use the increment, and today the state is the beneficiary because the property taxes that are generated there are significant. I think it was very short-sighted to end redevelopment, but it is what it is. I can't stand up today and support this bill because it creates winners and losers, and I have to support my 5 cities that are being harmed by this bill. I regretfully will not support it and urge a no vote on SB 107.
Thank you, sir. Senator Nielsen.
Mr. President and ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, the saga continues with the RDAs. They foundered on their own, if you will, greed and manipulation years ago. The seizures of private property by eminent domain, I guess I'd say favoring certain investors, sweetheart dealing it, if you will, and this vast accrual of the tax increment. And particularly offensive to me was the abuse of eminent domain, taking the private property of one owner and then conveying that property that they had seized to another authority that would be doing more what the city saw in its best interests. So they ended. Now we have this legislation, and it's not a reform. It does not contain, constrain, and address any of the abusive things that happened in the past, nor would it preclude anything so abusive to happen in the future. Senator Stone mentions, if you take a list of the cities that gain and lose, I trust you're going to find a lot of yours in the lose category. That's not reform legislation. And it's not something that should happen in the last night of session. And there was certainly a paucity of individuals or representatives of the cities and of the counties in committee having any opinion on this legislation, except mostly whoever did say had concerns and didn't like it, including some very small ones, but who surely were absent, because they don't even know about this, are private property owners, who with the passage of this bill will yet again be vulnerable to those excesses that have not been addressed. So the old saying, let sleeping dogs lie, I would say let sleeping RDAs lie for tonight. If you want to look at them again next year, so be it. Tonight is not the night to resurrect the RDAs and the abuses they inflicted on so many. Urge a no vote.
Thank you, sir. Any further debate? He's not the floor jockey. Senator Black.
Thank you, Madam President. You know, for those who didn't have the opportunity to attend or watch the Budget Committee meeting today where this bill was discussed, if you had seen it, you would have seen a very different display than has been described by the previous folks who spoke to you. There was a line of about 20 people representing a variety of cities, counties, entities, unions, et cetera, from around the state. And of that line, I think there were 2, maybe 3, who spoke against the bill that's before you tonight. They also talked to you about how this is at the 9th hour, 9.43 hour of the debate. We've been negotiating this bill for weeks and months. My staff has been working with the Governor's Department of Finance since early June on this bill. Others have been working with their staffs with the Governor's Office, Department of Finance. And frankly, I am very proud of the work that we've done, that my office and others have done to get the Department of Finance to negotiate, to move from their original position, which I don't think was nearly as good as this bill, to a bill that I can wholeheartedly support. And my friend from Temecula mentioned public safety as a concern. I can just tell you that one of the many witnesses who spoke in favor of this bill was representing the California professional firefighters, and she spoke in the strongest terms about why this was good for public safety and why the firefighters support it. So I would urge you to be with the firefighters on this, be with the many cities and counties that support this, and cast an aye vote.
Senator Morlock.
Colleagues, I think we're missing a bigger issue. We went through a recession, and it was pretty difficult for cities and counties the last few years. And what sort of keeps happening during tough economic times is that Sacramento reaches down and takes money from cities and takes money from counties to balance this state's budget. And it wasn't pretty, and it wasn't fun, and I was chairman of the Board of Supervisors when we had to establish successor agencies and deal with acronyms like ROPS for Recognized Obligation Payment Schedules. And, you know, it created a hornet's nest, and it also created some pretty bitter relationships between cities in Sacramento and counties in Sacramento. And so now this bill showed up today. And we've got hurt relationships. I think we need to avoid further acrimony. I think we ought to maybe think about making this a 2-year bill. And we need to have a governor that can reach down and work with the cities, work with the counties, and try to restore some decorum because we've all got to work together to make this a great state. And I would tell you, coming from the level of county supervisor to here, there's a lot of bitterness, there's a lot of frustration, there's a lot of mandates that have been unpaid, a lot of money taken, a lot of changes made. And I think the bigger picture is we need to figure out how to restore relationships. We need to work with the mayors, we need to work with supervisors. And I would just caution you that before we rush through this bill on one day's notice, we use a little wisdom and step back, take a deep breath, and work together. Thank you, colleagues. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. Senator Stone, on the same bill?
Thank you, Madam President, again. And I'd just like to quickly respond, since I was also at the hearing. Yeah, we had a line of speakers, and I appreciate that my colleague and my friend from San Diego has been working on this for months, and I guess that's one of the perks and benefits when you work in the majority party is that you have access to all the workings with the governor and trying to come up with solutions in back rooms. But you know what? There's not transparency in this bill. Where is the openness? You know, we profess that we want to have the Brown Act. I know that the one that introduced this bill today made a commitment in one of our hearings that we would see things 72 hours in advance in print. I saw this bill for the first time today. How can we expect people that live in San Diego, Imperial County, Chico, how can we expect them to fly up here at a hearing where there's no defined time that they're going to be able to speak and give us what the impacts are to their cities? This is not the appropriate way to run government, my friends. This is a debacle. We have over 450 cities in the state of California, and I bet many of you don't even know the impacts that are going to happen in your respective cities, but I'll guarantee you, if you pass this bill tonight, you will hear from your cities, and they will demand of you, what did you do? What kind of investigations? Did you call the cities like I did today that were impacted and said, how do you feel about this bill? What can I do to mitigate the circumstances of this bill? How many of you did that? I hope you did. I did. And many of my cities are getting hurt by this and haven't even had the opportunity to come and at least challenge the document, challenge the methodology. This is just wrong. It's wrong. I know it's 9:49 on the last day of session. Why didn't we have this a week ago in advance so we could work with our cities and counties so that Republicans can be a part of the equation and compromise and have fiscal harmony in the cities and counties in the state of California due to the horrific impact that the state of California has perpetually impacted them with. Mr. Pro Tem and members, this creates winners and losers. Our cities are our brothers and sisters, our grandparents, our aunts and uncles. They would just like the state to just lay off, stop impacting them. And here we are today, not even listening to them, not even hearing their objections. They don't even know if they have any objections because they haven't had an opportunity to read the 100-plus page document. It'd be interesting to know how many of you read the 104-page document. I would imagine not many have. For those reasons, Madam Chair, last time I will speak, in the interest of fairness, we should open this building up to transparency with all of our cities and all of our counties, and let's make them all winners in this process, not pick the winners and losers.
Thank you, sir. Any further debate? Senator Hill.
Thank you, Madam President. And just briefly, I wanted to respond from my good friend from Temecula. In the digital age that we're living in, I've heard from a number of cities in my district today. They've read the bill. They've had communication with us. We've had communication with the Department of Finance, negotiations with the Department of Finance. In fact, even this evening, I believe watching right now is the mayor of the city of Los Altos Hills, who just sent me a note on this very bill. So I think we're communicating with everyone around the state as necessary. Everyone understands this bill and has been working hard to make it the best bill possible, and I ask for your aye vote.
Thank you, sir. Senator Roth.
Thank you, Madam President. Colleagues, I just want to make sure that all in the room, since we're talking about transparency, know the process that was followed in this case and has been followed since we started dealing with the budget and these trailer bills earlier this year. As the chair of Budget Subcommittee 4, this matter came before my subcommittee this year. It came before my subcommittee last year, and for those who were on certainly the Budget Committee, as my colleague from Riverside County is, you're aware of the process, and these Budget Subcommittee hearings are noticed, and there was several hearings, at least 2, on this particular trailer bill noticed this year. The hearings were lengthy, several hours in length. The folks lined up in the hearing room and outside the hearing room to talk about the redevelopment trailer bill issues in great detail. We spared no one the opportunity and the time to express their views in extraordinary detail. So this trailer bill has been in print. There have been changes made to it, certainly. It's been available for all of us to read week after week, month after month that we've been here this legislative cycle. So for anyone in the chamber here to suggest that there's a lack of transparency on this redevelopment issue and the attempt that this administration has made to try and resolve some of these outstanding issues, I find it hard to understand how that statement can be made. There's been a comment made that cities in Riverside County are injured by the changes that this bill contains. And it's certainly my understanding that no city in Riverside County is injured by the changes. Many may not be benefited. Many may be neutral in terms of the financial impact. But it's my understanding that none are adversely impacted and some are positively impacted. So on the issue of transparency, I say there's been plenty of transparency. On the issue of opportunity to discuss, opportunity to criticize, opportunity to question, and opportunity to hear from the public, I say there's been plenty of that. So having said all of that, I respectfully urge you to vote aye on this measure.
Thank you. Senator Lara.
Thank you, Madam President. You know, I am definitely one to appreciate high drama, but as being one of the members that was here when we had this discussion, I vividly remember, as we now kind of romanticize the League of Cities, that we had an opportunity to actually work with the League. And what did the League do? They turned around and sued us, as opposed to trying to work with us. And this is partially why we're in this mess. Now, this bill is imperfect, but I do appreciate the governor and the leadership working with both senators who represent Long Beach to ensure that, you know, we get our fair share. But I do want to just say that, you know, although this is not perfect, this is definitely a much better product than we were a couple years ago. And again, I urge the League of Cities to actually work with the legislature as opposed to continuing to fight us on this issue.
Thank you, Senator. Is there any additional discussion or debate? Any additional discussion or debate? Seeing none, Mr. Secretary, please call the, oh, I'm sorry. Senator Leno, please close.
Thank you, Madam President. It is appropriate that we thank the Department of Finance and the administration for taking the time to work through the entire summer to get as many cities and counties and as many of our districts to benefit from a loosening of the purse strings and a loosening and expansion of the allowance on at least a half dozen issues that have impacted all of us through the dissolution of redevelopment agencies process. This bill is going to cost us, the state, about $300 million, potentially more, that will be going to cities and counties. That is a benefit for all those who have been harmed or in a complaint mode. If you vote no, that's $300 million the state will keep and cities and counties won't get. Now, not everyone may benefit, but proof that this is an improvement from where we have been is that we didn't take up the bill earlier in the summer in our budget committee because the votes weren't there. Today, the votes were there. So we've moved it from committee to the floor, and I think the proof will be in the votes that this is beneficial for many members compared to the status quo. So this is a very worthy bill. Again, thank you to the administration for hearing our concerns, for listening to us, and making things better for as many as possible. There are some cities for whom we can't make things right because there was actually fraud. And that's just a fact of life. We can't make that right. In many other cities, there were concerns with what is an enforceable obligation. What about loans that we made in different forms? Can we be reimbursed for them? That's what this bill does. It takes care of them. So I would ask for your aye vote.
Thank you. Mr. Secretary, please call the roll.
Allen? Aye. Anderson? No. Bates? No. Bell? Aye. Berryhill? Block? Aye. Cannella? Aye. De Leon? Aye. Fuller? No. Gaines? No. Galgiani? Aye. Glazer? Hall? Aye. Hancock? No. Hernandez? Aye. Hertzberg? Aye. Hill? Aye. Hueso? Aye. Huff? No. Jackson? Aye. Lara? Aye. Leno? Aye. Leva? Aye. Liu? McGuire? No. Mendoza? No. Mitchell? Aye. Monning? Aye. Morlock? Morrell? Aye. Wynn? No. Nielsen? No. Pan? Aye. Pavley? Aye. Roth? Aye. Runner? No. Stone? No. Vidak? No. Wachowski? Aye. Wolk? Wolk, no.
Call the absent members, please.
Berryhill? Glazer? No. Liu? Aye. Morlock? Aye.
Ayes 24, noes 15. The Assembly amendments are concurred in.